The first trial. In the vast expanse of the galaxy, where stars burned bright like distant beacons, the Calathar Dominion held sway over countless worlds. Their power was absolute, their code unbreakable, and their expectations unparalleled. Humanity had made its mark on the galactic map, but as a species still learning the intricacies of interstellar diplomacy, Earth stood on the precipice of a monumental decision. A decision that could either secure its place in the galaxy or cast it aside as nothing more than a footnote in history. Commander Marla Voss, one of Earth's brightest and most decorated officers, had been selected to represent humanity in the most critical mission of her life. She stood at the threshold of the Calathar Citadel, a monumental structure that spanned the horizon, built into the jagged mountains of the planet's capital. It was said that even the bravest of warriors had trembled in the face of its gates. This was not just a diplomatic mission. This was a trial of endurance, wit, and above all, strength. As she walked toward the entrance, flanked by her team, Marla felt the weight of her ancestors' hopes on her shoulders. Earth's future rested in the hands of a few brave souls, and this was their moment. The Calathar had made one thing clear: if humanity was to join their dominion, it would have to prove its worth. No amount of promises or pleas could sway their decision. Only actions, strength, and resolve would determine Earth's place among the stars. Marla stepped into the grand hall of the Citadel, where the air felt charged with tension. The walls were adorned with intricate alien runes, glowing softly, their meaning lost on her despite years of study. It wasn't the architecture that took her breath away, though. It was the presence that filled the space. The Calathar, in their regal armor and stoic expressions, filled every corner of the room. Each one a silent sentinel, their eyes following her every move with silent judgment. At the far end of the hall stood the most imposing figure of all. High Chancellor Falkor, the leader of the Calathar Dominion, stood atop a raised platform. His skin was a deep shade of violet, his eyes gleaming with an intensity that could pierce even the bravest of hearts. His mere presence radiated power, and Marla felt her pulse quicken. Behind him, a vast array of Calathar nobles, warriors, and diplomats observed the proceedings, their expressions unreadable. Commander Marla Voss, Falkor's voice boomed across the hall, smooth yet resonant. "You come before us, the Calathar, to ask for what no species before you has ever been granted, a place among the stars. Yet we do not offer such gifts lightly. Prove to us your strength, your resolve, and your worth. Only then shall we consider your request." The weight of his words echoed in the vast chamber. This was not just a test of strength. This was a test of everything humanity had ever fought for. The Calathar revered power above all else, and their idea of strength was far different from the human interpretation. They did not care for diplomacy or pleasantries. They sought raw, unyielding resolve. Without warning, the ground beneath Marla shifted. The chamber seemed to transform, the walls groaning as though they were alive, reshaping to form a new, unpredictable environment. Suddenly, the once pristine hall was replaced by a vast arena, an intricate maze of alien machinery, glowing energy fields, and floating platforms. It was a battlefield, one designed to challenge even the most seasoned warriors. "Survive this trial, Commander Voss," Falkor's voice rang out again, "and we will consider your request. Fail, and Earth shall remain in the shadows of the galaxy, forgotten." Marla's heart raced, but her face remained calm. She could feel the weight of her crew's hopes, her people's future, pressing on her. This was it. No second chances, no room for error. As the trial began, the ground beneath her feet began to hum with energy, and the floating platforms shifted, rearranging themselves into new configurations. The first challenge revealed itself, a series of obstacles that moved at lightning speed, shifting like living things. She had only moments to react. Her military training kicked in immediately, the years of preparation coming to fruition in an instant. But this was unlike anything she had ever encountered. Each obstacle seemed to test her in a new way. At first, it was the physical challenge. A wall of jagged spikes shot out of the floor, threatening to impale her. With quick reflexes, she leaped out of the way, landing on a nearby platform just as the spikes retracted. The crowd of Calathar watched with rapt attention, their expressions inscrutable. Then came the mental challenge. A holographic puzzle appeared before her, its complexity staggering. Symbols shifted and rotated, forming and reforming at impossible speeds. She had no idea what it meant, but she knew that solving it would be key to advancing further. She focused all her attention on the task, her mind working at lightning speed to decipher the code. The pressure mounted with every passing second, the room growing hotter, the ground vibrating as if the very arena itself was alive and eager to see her fail. Marla's breath came in shallow gasps, but she never wavered. The Calathar wanted to see if humanity could survive the impossible, to see if Earth was capable of adapting under pressure. She had no choice but to succeed. The symbols began to click in her mind, falling into place like the final pieces of a puzzle. Her fingers flew across the console, inputting the sequence as the room around her began to shift again. She had done it. The next trial awaited, but the first hurdle had been overcome. Falcor's voice echoed again, this time tinged with approval. "Impressive, Commander Voss. But remember, the true test is only just beginning." Marla stood tall, her resolve unwavering. This was only the beginning. Earth's future hung in the balance, and she would see it through, no matter what the Calathar threw her way. The maze of shadows. Commander Marla Voss stood in the midst of the alien arena, the first trial behind her, but the looming uncertainty of what awaited next hanging over her like a storm cloud. The shifting platforms and deadly obstacles had been her first test, a test she had passed through skill, wit, and sheer determination. But she knew the Calathar were not easily impressed. This was just the beginning. The trial would escalate, and her survival would depend not only on her strength, but on her ability to adapt to an environment designed to push her to the very edge of her endurance. The arena now seemed to take on a life of its own, the walls pulsating with an eerie light, casting long shadows across the floor. The ground beneath her feet began to tremble, a low hum vibrating through the air, as if the very foundation of the arena was alive, watching her. A voice echoed out from the unseen speakers above, cold and impersonal, as if toying with her very thoughts. "Welcome to the maze of shadows, Commander Voss. Here, your courage will be tested. Only those who conquer their deepest fears will emerge victorious." Marla's pulse quickened. The air felt heavier now, oppressive, as if the arena itself was closing in on her. She took a deep breath, pushing the rising sense of unease to the back of her mind. This was the Calathar way. Test not just the body, but the spirit. And she knew one thing for certain. No fear would control her. As the words faded, the arena transformed around her once again. The ground shifted, and towering walls rose from the floor, creating a labyrinth of sharp turns and dark corners. It was impossible to see where the maze began or ended. The only light came from glowing symbols on the walls, casting strange, unsettling shadows that seemed to move with a mind of their own. Marla stepped forward, her boots echoing in the silence. Every instinct told her to stay alert, to move with precision. Her breath was steady, but her heart raced. Each turn, each passageway, led her deeper into the unknown. The further she went, the more intense the feeling of being watched became. She could feel eyes on her, an unblinking, unyielding gaze that sent a chill crawling up her spine. The first challenge came without warning. As she rounded a corner, the floor beneath her feet gave way, and she plunged into a pit of thick, inky darkness. For a split second, she felt herself falling, the void swallowing her whole. But before panic could take root, her training kicked in. She twisted her body midair, reaching out for the walls, and using every ounce of strength to grasp onto a jagged ledge. Her fingers scraped the rough surface as she swung herself back onto solid ground, her heart pounding. She was shaken but unharmed. As she rose, the maze seemed to shift again, this time revealing a set of eerie, ghostly figures emerging from the shadows. Their forms were indistinct, flickering in and out of existence like fleeting memories. Marla's eyes narrowed, trying to make sense of them. The figures whispered in hushed voices, too soft for her to understand, but loud enough to feel unsettling. Each whisper seemed to pierce her thoughts, dredging up fragments of her past, memories of loss, failure, and doubt. Faces of those she had left behind, of the soldiers who had fallen in battle, haunted her from the edges of her mind. "Do you think you're worthy of this challenge, Commander?" one of the figures asked, its voice like a distant echo. "Your people, your soldiers, they will be forgotten. Your efforts, meaningless." Marla's breath caught in her throat, but she pushed the thoughts away. She had faced loss before, and she had overcome it. She was no stranger to pain. The Calithar would not break her with tricks of the mind. She knew what they were trying to do. This was a test of resolve, a test of the human spirit. To break her, they had to make her question herself. But she refused to falter. "I am worthy," she whispered to herself, though she knew no one was there to hear. "I am worthy." As she moved deeper into the maze, the whispers grew louder, more urgent. The shadows around her seemed to reach for her, to wrap themselves around her limbs, pulling her toward the depths of the labyrinth. For a brief moment, she could feel the pressure mounting, fear clawing at her insides, threatening to choke her, but she shook it off, focusing on the path ahead. Suddenly, the maze shifted again. The shadows parted, revealing a massive door ahead of her. It was adorned with ancient, glowing symbols that pulsed with a strange energy. Without thinking, she moved toward it, her hand reaching for the door. As her fingers brushed against the surface, a burst of energy shot through her, sending her staggering back. The door remained locked, and a voice boomed through the arena, cold and imperious. "To proceed, you must face your deepest fear, Commander Voss. Only then will the door open." Marla's mind raced. She had expected physical trials, but this was something entirely different. She had no idea what lay beyond the door, but she knew she couldn't back down. She had come too far. The room began to darken, and the whispers turned to shouts. The shadows around her began to swirl, creating a vortex that pulled at her, threatening to consume her whole. She could hear voices, familiar voices, calling her name. At first, it was the voices of her crew, her soldiers, her comrades. Then, it was her parents' voices, calling out for her to return home. The voices of those she had lost in battle echoed around her, growing louder and more desperate. "You failed them." A sharp shiver ran down Marla's spine, but she refused to succumb to the fear that had nearly undone her in the maze of shadows. This was another test, another manipulation meant to break her will. She wasn't going to fall for it. "Show yourself," Marla demanded, her voice ringing out in the quiet. For a moment, the silence returned, thick and suffocating. Then the room before her flickered, and someone, stepped out from the shadows. It was a figure, cloaked in darkness, their face hidden beneath a hood. The figure took a step forward, and Marla's heart skipped a beat. The voice she had been hearing now made sense. "Not real," she muttered to herself. "Just another illusion." But the figure did not respond in the way she had expected. Instead, it reached up, pulling back the hood to reveal a familiar face. The face of her younger brother, Jason. "Marla," he said, his voice filled with a sadness she hadn't heard in years. "Why are you doing this? You don't have to fight anymore. You've already lost so much." Her breath caught in her throat. This was impossible. Jason had been lost to her years ago during a failed mission, one that still haunted her nightmares. She had blamed herself for his death, had questioned her every decision since that day. Seeing him again now, standing before her as though nothing had changed, nearly shattered her. But Marla clenched her fists, refusing to let her emotions control her. "No," she whispered, her voice steadier now. "I didn't lose you, Jason. I couldn't save you. but I'm not going to let your memory stop me from doing what needs to be done. For Earth. For humanity. Jason's form flickered, his features distorting as the room around her began to warp. But you're alone, Marla. There's no path left for you. No one will remember what you did. Your efforts, your sacrifices, they were for nothing. Tears stung her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She had come too far, fought too hard. I'll be remembered, she said with newfound conviction, her voice trembling with the weight of the truth. Humanity will be remembered. The illusion of Jason faltered and flickered, like a hologram losing its signal. The form disintegrated into nothingness, leaving Marla standing alone in the vast, empty chamber once again. For a moment, the silence was deafening, but then the voice returned. Your resolve is stronger than we anticipated, Commander, but this is not the end of your trial. The path is still ahead, and it will only grow more difficult. Are you truly prepared to walk it? Marla nodded, her jaw set in determination. I am ready. The walls shifted once more, revealing a new path ahead, lined with floating platforms that hovered just above an abyss. The platforms drifted unpredictably, their movements slow at first, but growing faster as they shifted through the air, creating an ever-changing course. Marla knew what she had to do. The trial now was one of balance, precision, and patience. She could not rush through it, nor could she hesitate. One misstep, and she would be lost to the void below. She took a deep breath, focusing on the platforms ahead. With swift, calculated movements, she stepped onto the first platform, feeling it wobble beneath her weight. She adjusted her stance, moving forward with precision, each step a measured calculation. As she moved across the platforms, the challenge intensified. The space around her seemed to grow darker, the air growing thick with pressure. The platforms sped up, twisting and turning in midair, forcing her to leap between them with perfect timing. One wrong move, one hesitation, and she would fall into the abyss. But Marla was determined. Each movement, each step was deliberate. Her mind was sharp, focused solely on the task at hand. The Calithar may have thought they could break her, but they hadn't accounted for humanity's resilience, the ability to adapt, to survive against impossible odds. As she neared the final platform, a surge of energy pulsed from beneath her feet, causing the platform to jolt violently. Marla's heart raced, but she didn't falter. She leaped, her body propelling through the air, her arms outstretched to land on the final platform, just as it shifted one last time. She landed with a thud, the platform beneath her settling into place. The abyss had been conquered, and the trial had been passed. But Marla knew better than to relax. This was only one step on the path. The Calithar would continue to test her. Each trial, each challenge, would bring her closer to proving humanity's worth. The chamber around her fell silent once more, the walls now a faint glow of light. Ahead, a new door opened, its passage dark and mysterious. The next trial awaited, and Commander Marla Voss, unshaken and resolute, was ready for it. The echoes of time. The door ahead of Commander Marla Voss slowly creaked open, revealing a vast, ethereal space, unlike anything she had encountered so far. The air was thick with a strange energy, its presence almost suffocating. The walls of the chamber appeared to be made of shimmering glass, as if the entire room existed within a bubble of time itself. The very essence of the space felt fragile, as though it could fracture at any moment. Marla took a cautious step forward, her boots making no sound as she moved into the room. This was different. This was no ordinary trial. It felt as though the very fabric of reality was bending around her. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, upon which lay a strange, glowing orb. The orb pulsed with an inner light, its surface constantly shifting in color. Blue, gold, violet, patterns swirling around it as if it were a living, breathing entity. Marla instinctively stepped toward it, drawn to its enigmatic glow, but the moment she did, the space around her seemed to collapse inward. The walls distorted, bending in on themselves as an unseen force pressed against her. Before she could react, the room shifted again, and Marla found herself standing in an unfamiliar landscape. The sky above her was a fiery red, filled with swirling clouds that seemed to bleed into one another. The ground beneath her was cracked and barren, stretching out in all directions. There were no signs of life, only remnants of a past that had long been forgotten. A distant, haunting wind blew through the ruins, carrying with it a sense of loss and despair. She blinked, unsure of where or when she was, but the faintest flicker of recognition washed over her. This place, it wasn't unfamiliar. The echoes of her past began to surface in her mind, blurry images that seemed to play just beyond her reach. A figure appeared in the distance, cloaked in tattered robes. It was humanoid, but something about its movements seemed unnatural, slower, almost hesitant. As it drew closer, Marla's heart skipped a beat. She recognized the figure instantly. It was herself, but not the Marla Voss standing here now. This was her, years ago, before the mission that had changed everything. Before the failure, the Marla in front of her looked lost, broken, haunted by a past that she had long since buried. The figure's eyes met hers, and for a moment, it felt as if time itself had frozen. "You failed them," the echo of herself whispered, her voice a hollow version of what Marla knew it to be. "You failed us all." The words stung, a familiar pain washing over her chest. Marla had heard these words in her mind countless times, the weight of that failure threatening to crush her. The mission where she had lost so many of her crew, the mission where her brother Jason had died. Those memories had never left her. They had become a part of her, a constant reminder of her imperfections. But this time, she was no longer the same person. She had faced down fear, confronted her past, and fought to move forward. She wouldn't let this version of herself dictate who she was anymore. "No," Marla said firmly, her voice echoing across the barren landscape. "I didn't fail. I learned. I grew. I didn't stop." The echo of herself didn't respond, instead turning away and walking slowly into the distance, its figure fading into the swirling storm. The ground trembled beneath her feet, and the atmosphere seemed to shift again. The landscape began to fracture, the cracks in the earth widening, swallowing the ruins whole. The world she had just seen, her past, her regrets, began to crumble into nothingness. Marla blinked again, and the scene around her shifted. She was no longer in that desolate place, but standing in a dense forest, the trees towering high above her, their bark glistening with an unnatural sheen. The air was cool, carrying the scent of damp earth. The quiet of the forest was broken only by the sound of her footsteps crunching against the fallen leaves. And then she heard it, the faint rustling of branches above. She wasn't alone. A figure dropped from one of the trees, landing silently on the forest floor in front of her. It was a creature, sleek and feline in appearance, with sharp eyes and a coat that shimmered like liquid silver. The creature's body rippled with energy, its muscles coiling as if ready to pounce. Marla instinctively reached for her weapon, but before she could draw it, the creature spoke, its voice smooth and guttural. "You're not the first to come here," it said, its eyes narrowing as it circled her. "This place is an echo of many trials, many who failed before you. You think you can survive what others could not. You are not special. You are just another lost soul." The creature's words were sharp, venomous, and they cut deeper than any physical blow could. Marla's mind raced. The Calathar had warned her that the trials would test her in ways she couldn't yet comprehend. But this was something different. This was not just a test of her abilities, but of her belief in herself. The creature lunged, but Marla reacted instinctively. She rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the swipe of its claws. Her heart raced as she spun to face it, her breath coming in quick gasps. She could feel her muscles straining, her body pushed to its limits. But the creature was relentless, its movements impossibly fast, striking with precision. This trial wasn't just about survival, It was about proving that she could overcome the doubts, the fears, the very essence of the past that held her back. The creature was a manifestation of her own insecurities, the belief that she wasn't enough. But Marla had already overcome so much. She wouldn't let this trial defeat her. Not now. Not when so much was at stake. With a swift motion, Marla leaped into the air, her body twisting as she drew a bladed knife from her belt. She aimed for the creature's underbelly, her strike precise. The creature howled in pain as the blade connected, but it was not defeated. It snarled, turning to face her again. But this time, its movement slowed, as if it had lost its resolve. Marla stood firm, sweat dripping from her forehead, her chest heaving. She had faced the echoes of her past, her failures, and now she faced the creature born from her deepest doubts. And she was not going to let it win. With a final, decisive movement, she thrust the knife forward, catching the creature's side with the edge. It let out a screech, fading into nothingness, its form dissipating into the air like smoke. The forest around her seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, the tension lifting as the trial ended. The space returned to stillness, and the pedestal with the glowing orb reappeared before her. It pulsed brighter than before, almost as if it were calling to her, recognizing her strength. Marla stepped forward, reaching out to touch the orb, knowing that the next trial awaited. But for now, she had proven something to herself. She was not defined by the failures of her past. She was stronger than the doubts that had tried to break her. And she would carry that strength with her into the next challenge. The orb began to glow brighter, signaling the next phase of the trial. Marla was ready. The descent into the void. Marla Voss stood before the glowing orb, her fingers hovering just above its surface. The power emanating from it was palpable, its energy crackling in the air like static. Her mind was sharp, the previous trials still fresh in her memory. She had overcome her fears, faced the echoes of her past, and conquered every challenge thrown her way. But she knew better than to believe the hardest part was over. This orb, and the trials ahead, were meant to test her in ways she could not yet imagine. As her fingers brushed the orb, the world around her shifted once again. This time, there was no gradual transition. The ground beneath her feet disappeared entirely, and she was plunged into darkness. The sensation of falling took over her, the air rushing past her ears in a deafening roar. Her stomach lurched as she tumbled into the void, her limbs flailing in an instinctive attempt to grasp onto something, anything. But there was nothing. Just endless blackness, stretching out in every direction. For what felt like an eternity, Marla fell. The darkness was suffocating, and the silence was deafening. She had no way of knowing where she was, no point of reference to guide her. Panic began to rise in her chest, but she fought it down, focusing on her breathing, reminding herself that this was just another trial. Suddenly, her fall stopped, and the oppressive silence was shattered by a deep, resonating hum. The sound vibrated through her body, pulling at the very core of her being. The air around her seemed to come alive with energy, swirling like a storm. She opened her eyes to find herself standing on solid ground once more, though it was unlike any ground she had ever felt before. It was smooth and cold, like metal or glass, and the world around her was a swirling mass of colors and lights. The ground beneath her feet was now suspended in midair, floating above a vast, endless chasm that stretched beyond the horizon. The colors above her bled into one another like a cosmic nebula, brilliant hues of purple, gold, and red swirling in impossible patterns. The space was vast, almost infinite, and there was no clear direction, only the eerie, disorienting sense of weightlessness. Then, a voice broke through the swirling chaos. "Commander Voss," it called, its tones smooth and omnipresent, "you stand at the threshold of the void. This place is neither time nor space, but a reflection of the very fabric of reality. It is a place of pure uncertainty, a place where all things are in flux, and nothing is as it seems." Marla stood tall, her stance firm despite the disorienting environment. "What do you want from me?" She called out into the void, though the voice seemed to come from everywhere. not from a single source. You have faced your fears. You have battled your doubts. But now, Commander, you must face the final trial, the trial of choice. In this place, there are no right answers, no clear path forward. You will be presented with a decision, and whatever choice you make will shape the outcome of your journey. Marla's heart skipped a beat. She had expected more physical trials, but this was a trial of the mind, of decision. And as the voice continued to echo in the vastness, she realized that she was not being tested in the traditional sense. This was about the very essence of leadership, of sacrifice, and of the weight of responsibility. The colors of the void began to swirl more intensely, as if reacting to her thoughts. Slowly, figures began to materialize before her, shadows in the form of people, each one unique, yet somehow familiar. The first figure was a woman, wearing the uniform of an Earth soldier. Her face was strong, her expression set in determination, but there was something in her eyes, something that made Marla's chest tighten with recognition. This was her second-in-command, Lieutenant Sarah Delgado, one of the many soldiers she had fought alongside in her career. "Commander," Delgado's voice echoed in Marla's mind, her tone filled with both loyalty and desperation. "I am asking you to choose me. I know you can save us all. You're the only one who can ensure Earth's future. You must choose to save Earth, and let me sacrifice myself." The vision of Sarah faded and was replaced by another figure, this time a man. A young officer, someone Marla had trained during her early days in the military. His name was Ryan Carter, and he had died in a botched mission years ago. Marla's heart clenched again as his figure appeared before her, his face filled with an innocent, hopeful expression. "Marla," Ryan's voice came, soft and almost pleading. "You don't have to sacrifice yourself. You can save everyone. Just choose to stay with us. Earth doesn't need to lose you. The people need you." A wave of grief washed over Marla. These figures were not just manifestations. They were the faces of those she had lost, the choices she had made. Each vision was a test, asking her to decide who would be sacrificed for the greater good, who would live and who would die. In the distance, a third figure appeared, a faceless silhouette that slowly took form, but its identity remained obscured. It was a creature of sorts, alien and strange, but its posture spoke of an unyielding strength. The figure reached out, and the voice it spoke with was different from the others. It was calm, but it resonated with a profound sense of wisdom. "Commander Voss," it said, "I am the decision you must make. A choice that could alter the fate of both Earth and the galaxy. You stand at the crossroads, where every action will lead to either salvation or destruction. Your path forward is uncertain, and the consequences of your choices will shape the future of your people. Choose wisely, for you have only one chance." The swirling colors in the sky grew more intense, the air vibrating with tension. Marla's mind raced. There was no clear right or wrong answer here. The weight of her people's future, the lives of those she loved, hung in the balance. The decisions she made would echo throughout history. She felt the burden of command like never before. The sacrifices, the responsibilities. And in that moment, Marla realized that the true test was not about saving everyone. It was about knowing that no matter what choice she made, there would always be a price to pay. There would always be someone lost. The silence around her deepened. She knew her time was running out. "Commander," the voice called again. Softer now. "Make your choice." Marla took a deep breath, centering herself in the vast, chaotic void. The swirling visions of her past, of her comrades, of her people, seemed to fade away as her mind sharpened. She had always known that leadership was about sacrifice, but she had never truly understood it until now. Her choice would shape the future. It would define her, and Earth, forever. With a steady voice, she spoke. "I choose the future. I choose humanity." And in that moment, the void around her seemed to release its grip, and the path forward unfolded, leading her toward the next trial. The Forge of Destiny. The air around Marla seemed to vibrate with an unearthly energy as the swirling colors of the void began to dissipate. The ground beneath her feet solidified, a jagged rocky terrain stretching out before her. A low hum echoed through the air, as if the very earth itself was alive, pulsing with the remnants of ancient power. The path ahead was narrow, winding through towering cliffs and treacherous ravines. She knew that this next trial would be unlike any she had faced so far, but she had come too far to turn back now. Her mind was focused, and her resolve was stronger than ever. As she moved forward, the weight of her previous decisions pressed heavily upon her. The trial of choice had not been easy. It had torn at her heart, forcing her to confront the lives of those she had lost. But in the end, she had chosen the future of humanity, no matter the cost. She had to believe it was the right choice. There was no room for doubt. Not now. The narrow path twisted ahead, leading her to a massive, glowing forge at the center of the ravine. The forge was unlike anything she had seen before. Its flames were not made of fire, but of pure, radiant energy, swirling in impossible patterns. The heat emanating from it was intense, even from a distance, and Marla could feel the sweat trickling down her face as she approached. The forge itself was set within a massive stone structure, its walls carved with intricate alien symbols that pulsed with a rhythmic energy. The forge was surrounded by a pool of liquid metal, its surface shimmering like quicksilver. From the depths of the pool, strange shapes began to rise, forged by the energies of the forge itself. Marla could feel a presence watching her, a force far older than anything she could comprehend. A voice, deep and resonant, echoed through the air, sending a ripple of energy through the landscape. "Welcome to the Forge of Destiny, Commander Voss," it said. "Here you will be tempered as steel is tempered, through fire and pressure, through trial and hardship. What you create in this forge will determine not just your own future, but the future of your people." Marla's pulse quickened, her mind racing. The Forge of Destiny. She knew this was the final trial. She had been tested in ways she could never have imagined, but this would test everything she was, her strength, her character, her ability to shape the future. The forge was a symbol of transformation, and in this moment, she would be forged into something new. The voice continued, "You will create an object, a tool of great power, forged in the heart of the forge. It will be your key to the future, but it will come at a cost. Only those who prove their true worth can wield the power of the forge. Fail, and all that you have fought for will be lost." Marla approached the forge, the heat of the radiant energy surrounding her like an invisible wall. She felt its power, its weight, and knew that it was no ordinary test. The forge demanded a sacrifice, a price to be paid for the power to shape destiny. Before her, the pool of liquid metal began to bubble, and strange forms began to rise from the depths. She reached out, her fingers brushing the smooth surface of the metal. It was warm to the touch, alive with energy. The choice lay before her. What would she create? What was needed for the future? She closed her eyes, focusing on the vision of Earth, the people, the cities, the battles she had fought. The lives lost, the lives saved. The future that hung in the balance. She had to create something that would tip the scales in humanity's favor, something that would change the course of history. The liquid metal began to swirl and shimmer beneath her touch, as if responding to her thoughts. Shapes formed, twisting and warping in the air like a living creature. A sword, a shield, a piece of technology. The options were limitless, but Marla knew that the object had to be more than just a weapon or tool. It had to represent humanity's strength, its resilience, its capacity to rise in the face of overwhelming odds. She felt the power of the forge deep within her, pushing her, urging her to choose. The object had to be a reflection of everything she had learned, everything she had fought for. It had to be more than just an item. It had to be a symbol of humanity's unwavering spirit. Then the vision struck her. She saw it, an emblem forged from the very essence of the forge. A staff, one that would serve as both a weapon and a beacon of hope. glowing with the combined energies of human ingenuity and resilience. The staff would be a symbol of leadership, a representation of the unity that had been built through sacrifice and struggle. It would carry with it the weight of Earth's future, a tangible manifestation of the power of choice and perseverance. With a steady hand, Marla guided the swirling energies, directing them into the shape of the staff. The metal twisted and shifted, coalescing into a long, sleek shaft, its surface etched with glowing runes that hummed with ancient energy. The tip of the staff formed into a sharp, crystalline blade, its surface shimmering with an ethereal light. The staff glowed with a steady pulse, an aura of power and purpose radiating from it. But as the staff began to solidify, Marla felt the cost. The forge's energy surged through her, its heat overwhelming, searing through her skin, her bones, her very soul. The pain was unbearable, like her very essence was being forged alongside the staff. She gasped, her vision blurring, but she pushed through the agony. She would not falter. The pain was a price she had to pay. The forge demanded sacrifice, and she would give it. This staff would be the key to humanity's future, a symbol of their ability to rise above adversity. It was the very embodiment of the choice she had made, the choice to forge ahead, no matter the cost. With a final surge of energy, the staff solidified in her hands, its glow intensifying. Marla dropped to one knee, her body racked with exhaustion, but her heart surged with a new strength. The staff was complete. It was more than just an object. It was a testament to everything humanity stood for. The voice returned, softer now, almost reverent. "You have succeeded, Commander Voss. The forge of destiny has tempered you. Your creation will lead the way forward, a symbol of hope, strength, and unity. But remember, with great power comes great responsibility. You have forged your destiny, and now it is time to wield it." Marla rose to her feet, the staff humming with power in her hands. She knew that this was just the beginning. The Calythar would test her no more, but the real trials were still ahead. The future of Earth, of humanity, rested on her shoulders, and she was ready to face whatever came next. The forge had shaped her, and now it was time for her to shape the future.